Just a minute. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can do this real quick. What's going on, guys? Get started. What is this ticker that I see people looking at? HKD. This thing went ballistic. What in the absolute hell is that? HKD. What the fudge sickles is this? Holy crap. This thing legit just went up $341 today. What the absolute damn. But welcome in, guys. Kind of get started here. I guess some more people will probably trickle in here just shortly, but a little bit of a short, it's pretty much a quiet day to start the week here. Not too much. I think pretty much the biggest takeaway was pretty much earlier on this morning. We had that nice little V-shaped recovery off a nice little gap down, which after the run that we had from last week, I think it was pretty much a little bit of I want to say known factor that we were going to get some kind of breather, some kind of a little bit of a sigh of relief in terms of just that vertical action we had to close out last week. So it was a phenomenal week last week. I think today's breather that we had in quite a few names, I wouldn't say all of them, was pretty much just justified. We saw the early snap on with Tesla. That literally just went ballistic, but then they ended up giving back pretty much all the gains on the day. We also saw pretty much the semis rallying behind AMD that's been showing monster strength ahead of their earnings tomorrow. So that's another one that's pretty much showed relative strength for most of the day. And then I was particularly watching Amazon, and I think you could also throw in Meta on there and that list as well. Those two names were pretty much particularly also showing some relative strength for most of the day. Amazon, of course, on the back end of their earnings, and then Meta pretty much just resurrecting itself from that debacle of their earnings. And I think another name to also throw out there, maybe keep that one on watch tomorrow, was Roku. That was a phenomenal one as well. And that was a hell of a snapback. I expected that to pretty much continue to die, but I guess the Bulls pretty much stepped in and someone heavily bought that dip. So that was another name. But what stood out more so from a macro perspective in terms of the price action today was identifying how Apple and Microsoft were pretty much reacting itself from pretty much earlier on in the morning, and then how they ended up pretty much progressively just getting worse as we started to see semis and Tesla with other names start to roll over. So I saw zero strength out of Apple today. I saw zero strength pretty much out of Microsoft. And that's what I'm going to particularly watch for tomorrow here. Do we see any kind of reversal, meaningful reversal, any kind of meaningful strength out of Apple and Microsoft in which they can lead the way possibly going into tomorrow, in which we maybe continue this rally. So as I kind of get into SPY real quick, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of what I'm basically looking at. Pretty much I was identifying here right into looking at today's price action primarily. I see a nice little descending broadening wedge. Those of you that pretty much know one of my favorite patterns, this is that pattern. It's a descending broadening wedge. Once you're particularly able to find that the 3 point on the pretty much that trend line support, you have your three endpoints. You have one, two, and three. You see the pretty much that vertical price action that you get once you find that third endpoint on the trend line support. And that's where we ended up getting into towards, I want to say towards power hour. And then we started to consolidate. Now, I'm going to pretty much favor the fact that we're going to get one more leg down here by morning, in which we see a similar gap down like we had today. But except the snapback that we're likely going to have, that V-shaped recovery like we had this morning, I think tomorrow we're going to particularly get a good follow through on it. So that's what I'm going to look for tomorrow. Let's see if we get this leg down, in which we should likely see a little bit more further downside, likely get down towards 408, probably wick 407, and then we'll see that quick snapback, and we should be able to break this downtrend resistance of the descending broadening wedge, and we should continue to trend north, in which my ideal target that I'm watching here would be towards 415, in which I would likely expect that to probably be reached there tomorrow. So 415 would be my ideal target here tomorrow. That's what I'm looking at in terms of upside. Otherwise, if we start to lose 407 tomorrow, that's when things particularly get ugly. And that's when I'm going to start to look towards the gap fill that we have. That's basically dating back towards July 29th. And that's going to be under 406.93. And we can start to see that gap fill pretty much get filled tomorrow if we do end up losing 407 on SPY tomorrow. All right. Otherwise, 407 should hold on the morning drop. And we should see that quick snap back. And 415 should be on the table towards upside. All right. So that's pretty much just keeping it as simple as I can say right now in terms of what I'm looking at. You can see the clear downside risk with that gap fill below, and then you can pretty much see the downtrend resistance that you're looking at to pretty much make a break over here. Over 411 half is basically what you're looking at to break that downtrend resistance. All right. Other than that, kind of just pointing to I guess a few names. I think I had some people pretty much hit me in chat in terms of looking at Tesla. I know that I want to say that sell-off was pretty massive. I believe there was a Nimbus put that came through that kind of played into the favor of it, and that was a pretty beautiful rollover that we had. But levels I'm watching here, particularly watching to see if we can basically reclaim over 904. We ended up hitting that 904 on that little micro pump we had going into power hour, but then we immediately faded it. So 904, 904 half is particularly that level I want to see if we can rip over. We get back over 904, 904 half, then I'm basically looking to basically retest today's highs of 935. And I mean, there's some resistance that I think Avery has on his chart right around 939, but I clearly see this going straight up to roughly about 949, and then we'll probably get up towards this little resistance as you see that we pretty much created opposite our trendline support. So 949 to me is still pretty much on the tables, but it looks like we need to clear today's high 935 half, and then 939 should be that next level to take us to a newer height. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Otherwise, if we break south of 886, this is going to start to roll over here, and then we can start to look towards 847, as this is likely going to end up getting uglier. All right, so that's going to be what I'll keep an eye on for that. A little bit of everything you just mentioned, Microsoft. That was definitely one that I had my eyes on today in terms of just that relative weakness that caught my attention. But what I'm particularly looking at is I do have a nice little fib that's kind of sitting here right now. We closed just below it, but that 278.73 level is what I was looking at to close above. We did not necessarily close above that level. So I'm going to look to see if we could pretty much reclaim that 278.73 tomorrow. And then I do have this making way up towards 287 potentially. And why do I say 287? That kind of lines up with this anchored view up that pretty much goes from all-time highs. And that also goes to the little circle, the little bubble here you see. That goes to retesting that prior distribution level that we ended up breaking down from at that 270, at that 287 level as well. So that's 287.51 is the level that I'm watching. And that would basically be retesting where you broke down from prior distribution on that little bubble. All right, but it's definitely going to be crucial to reclaim over 278.73. Otherwise, I think we pretty much risk coming right back down, and we could potentially see this come down towards 273 half is what I'm going to be looking at in terms of downside, which is roughly about what, $5 there. So 273 half is my downside target here tomorrow, in which this could potentially roll over further. Otherwise, I basically want to see ballpark here. You definitely want to see this push north of 279 to give you that round number. All right. So that's definitely going to continue to be on the watch list here. NVIDIA is pretty much another one that I have my eyes on as well. This is pretty much just going in sympathy with AMD for their earnings tomorrow. We basically closed right at an anchor view up that dates back towards our most recent high here from, what is this, March 29th. And so you can clearly see we closed just under that anchored view up. The anchored view up is pretty much, oh no, we closed just above it. 184.38 is the anchor view up, and we closed just a few cents above it. So I'm going to look to pretty much maintain this price action above 184.38 here. We continue to pretty much progress higher, and I'm targeting 194.41, and that'll be pretty much more of my resistances, and also lines up with our prior distribution levels that we should be retesting as a resistance as well. You can see the little bubbles. If I draw the line across, you basically see that that anchored view up pretty much lines up with where we ended up breaking down on the first bubble, and then we ended up retesting as a resistance on the second bubble before breaking down. So that's basically just retesting what was prior support, you want to say, as a resistance yet again. All right. And so that 294 is basically what I'm going to be, that 194 spot is what I'm going to essentially be looking for to retest. And then we should end up breaking down. What I actually like about NVIDIA though, in terms of just following AMD, is that we could see this pretty much run all day tomorrow into AMD's runnings along with AMD, and then we could likely see this end up gapping up as well off of AMD's earnings if that goes well. So kind of just a sympathy play. Obviously, you want to play it in a cheaper fashion. Probably likely, I would say, do a call debit spread to be safe on that. but this could definitely be how you play AMD's earnings in sympathy. All right. Jesse T triple Q. I'll take a peep at it for you. Let's take a look at T triple Q. So we're basically right at a nice resistance. You can see where, and I usually like to outline this pretty much where your prior distribution level was, or your prior resistance, you want to say. And you can clearly see that you're basically testing that level right now as we speak. So you pretty much, if you just draw a line right across, you can clearly just see that you're basically right around that level where you ended up breaking down previously, and you're testing it now as a resistance, and you clearly just rejected it so far. So you're definitely going to want to see this pretty much reclaim right back over 34 low, to be more precise, to take out the high of that 34 half. Otherwise, you risk this basically breaking back down, and then we're going to start to see this roll pretty much right back over, and we can trade this right down towards 30.42 is what I'm looking at for the downside. All right. But if you're looking at for upside on T triple Q, you basically want to see this break above what was prior distribution, which is now acting as a resistance right now off of this daily. So to be pretty much precise, yeah, you want to see this break over 34 half. If I'm assuming you're looking for upside here on T triple Q, is what my understanding would be. All right. So that's pretty much the level to keep an eye on. Is over 34 half. You break out north 34 half, then you'll see that upside continuation. All right. Otherwise, for right now, this is pretty much a pretty solid rejection off of that prior support that was broken down. All right. Other than that, pretty much just some highlights. LMT was a newsletter play. I kind of highlighted it on my Twitter, but that was a phenomenal move in which that ended up being a banger off the first day of the newsletter. So that went right into, I think, what was like my supply, you want to say it right now. A nice little descending broadening wedge, and again, these have been one of my most favorite patterns in terms of explosion. You can see the clear 1, 2, 3 endpoints on the trendline support. 1, 2, and 3. They all line wick for wick, you want to say, and that was just a beautiful reversal. And then we were looking for that strong continuation, and that went right into my pretty much my supply here, right around that 428 is what I was watching. All right, so that was a beautiful one. In terms of pretty much getting continuation on this, I was looking for this to basically retest 420. I want to say 419. We ended up getting that. We closed above the 419 level here. So that snapback that I'm looking at for continuation to the upside, you want to see LMT reclaim over 423, and then over 423, you have that anchor view up. It's pretty much we want to say resistance 425 half, and then we should be able to take out that 428 high from this morning. So this should see a little bit of solid continuation here tomorrow as long as 419 holds, and we could trade this up even as far as this downtrend resistance, which is up towards 434. So I like LMT a lot. I think there's some continuation to be made here. So I would definitely keep this one on the watch list. But 419 to me right now needs to hold particularly, and then we should see that upside continuation. All right. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else specifically on the watch list here just yet. We do want to see how tomorrow plays out. I would anticipate, again, we kind of get a little bit of a gap down like how we had this morning, and then we should see a snapback with more strength rather than what we saw this morning. All right. Other than that, though, I think that's kind of just short and sweet. Again, we have AMD earnings tomorrow afternoon. I don't know. I believe we had Activision here today. If I kind of just take a quick glance at that. Nothing just yet, but I know that that actually is supposed to be reporting earnings as well. So I would keep an eye on that. I actually had a little bit of a resistance pretty much sitting here on this one, roughly right around this 81 level is what I had resistance here. If she pops that, that's going to get interesting, and we're going to start to see a lot of traders target that gap fill test. Otherwise, some minor resistance that I would still say is more settling here is right around 81.84 is still some rough resistance. So we'll see if that ends up being a hard resistance or if we're able to break through that off of the earnings. So that's another one to pretty much keep an eye on. Other than that, I think that's pretty much a quiet start to the week, like I mentioned. We'll see what pretty much stirs up tomorrow. Keep an eye on the earnings run ups, AMD, NVIDIA sympathy, like I mentioned. Keep an eye also on the back end of Amazon's earnings. That was showing some relative strength as well early on this morning. I'm pretty big on that one as well. So let's see how Amazon does tomorrow morning. Other than that, I think that's kind of a quick, quiet wrap for me right now. Other than that, I will see you guys on live tomorrow morning. But I appreciate you guys joining in. And